With Adam Armstrong arriving at Wolves on deadline day, I think it's very important that we speak about how I think he'll settle in at the club, where I think he'll play, his strengths and some of his weaknesses, and overall why I personally like the signing. So let's get straight into this one. But before we do, I'd really appreciate it if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel down below. It's completely free to do both of those things. It costs you absolutely nothing and takes barely any of your time. I'd really appreciate it. We are trying to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Very, very unlikely, but your support on the videos recently has been absolutely incredible. And let's get straight into this one. And what do I like about Adam Armstrong, and what are Wolves fans expecting to see from him? Well, obviously, as you can see this season, in 24 starts, he has managed 11 goals and 4 assists. Now, generally, he's a player at championship level especially, whose output is very, very good. Now, what's there to like about him? He's a player that I've always liked in terms of his movement. I think his movement's absolutely brilliant, and that's probably what I would say is his biggest strength. I think his timing of his runs are absolutely excellent. I think he's constantly occupying defenders. He's making those darting runs and constantly looking for those slide rule passes in behind to ultimately gain the advantage on the opposition back line. And that's something that I've absolutely loved about Adam Armstrong for a number of years, and I think something that I think he will absolutely excel in this Wolves side if he can get those creative players in and around him next season, especially because I don't think we can really judge him on this season, given the fact that, let's be honest, he's never really been absolutely ridiculous at Premier League level, and also he's been pretty much signed for the Championship, hasn't he? So he's a player that does occupy defenders really well for someone who's very, very slight. You know, he's not a big player whatsoever. He's very, very small. He's very, very sharp. He's quick off the mark as well. And obviously at 28 years old, he is naturally slowing down a little bit. But he's starting to sort of reach what should be really his prime years. And I think it's really exciting to see if Wolves can get a tune out of him. And he looks to absolutely buzzing to be at the club, to be honest. And I think the one thing that I'd love about him, the fact that he does stretch back lines and they're constantly always worrying about him, always thinking where he's going to be, how he's going to make a run, where his runs are going to be made. And overall, there's not many better players in the Championship you can have to make those runs and to be that kind of player. Now, in this current side, I think it'd be very, very interesting for the remainder of the season to see where he does play. I think it's very likely that he plays instead of Hwang Hee-chan. But overall, I think it's a massively, massively exciting deal, really, especially the fact that Wolves probably are and almost inevitably are going to be in the Championship next season. Now, another thing that Wolves fans can absolutely expect from Adam Armstrong, and something that's really frustrating me with the likes of Hwang Hee-chan, Jurgen Strand-Larsen, of course, who's now left the club, Tolo Arokadara, and pretty much any striker since Raul Jimenez that Wolves have had, to be quite honest, is the fact that he's just willing to get 1 or 2 touches to get the ball out his feet and shoot. He often doesn't even take a touch sometimes, and he loves a first-time strike, and he's a player that isn't going to stand there trying to pass the ball into the net. He wants to get the ball. He wants to take as little touches as possible and finish the ball as effectively and quickly as possible. And he's always been like that. He's always been that tenacious, and we've seen that. And he, you know, even when he came through the academy and stuff like that, and Newcastle and around that time, even then he was still absolutely flying and a really exciting prospect at that time, and he's continued that throughout his career, to be honest. And although he's not a ridiculous player with his back to goal, I still think his link-up play is relatively solid. He often drops deep quite well, picks up possession quite well, and that's been my biggest criticism of Hwang Hee-chan in recent weeks, is the fact that he's often been the deepest of those 2 forwards out of him or Tolu. And when he does drop deep, more often than not, he loses the ball or doesn't play a pass that is on. You know, there could be a forward ball that could ultimately get another player in, and he doesn't really see that. Whereas Armstrong, as much as he's not an unbelievable passer of the ball, unbelievable in between the lines, I think he's more than capable and definitely better than the current level of striker at the club. Now, in short, Armstrong is a very, very good poacher striker. He's someone that's going to work hard. He's going to press from the front so well, and that's something that we haven't really spoken about in this video yet. But he is a great presser. He really will push that goalkeeper into a mistake. He will force the back line to have to think about where he's going to be. And he is a sort of a rat in a way. That's how I'd probably describe him. A bit of a pit bull in terms of he's just going to keep going and keep you guessing and keep you thinking. And he thrives off his movement. He thrives off his ability to have that change of pace and that ability to know where to make the run. So overall, it's a really, really promising sign for Wolves, especially next season. Now, this is how I think they'll line up for the remainder of the season with him in the side. I think he absolutely should take Hwang's spot in this side. I think Arokadara, yes, has been criticised recently, obviously reacted to it more recently as well. But I do think in terms of having that sort of stereotypical big and little going on, I think that dynamic will really work with Armstrong and Arokadara. And especially the fact that Arokadara can do the sort of things that Armstrong can't, the things that Armstrong lacks in terms of physical presence, in terms of holding the ball up. And that's one of Armstrong's massive weaknesses, of course, is because he is so slight. that he does often get knocked off the ball, or he doesn't win those aerial duels and fight for every ball. But to be fair, it makes no difference to having a very small Adam Armstrong or Jorgen Strand-Larsen who never challenges for any aerial ball that they've absolutely had in this season. So I don't think it makes that much of a difference to what they've been used to. But he is definitely better in front of goal and someone that is going to make more of a difference, in my personal opinion, especially in the Championship. Now, as I say, this is how I think they'll line up. Now, it's going to be very interesting to see how Wolves play. Of course, Wolves currently are playing with no real sort of pressure. No one's expecting them to stay up. And, you know, a lot of teams, when they come on to Wolves, are playing expansive and a bit more adventurous. You've seen the likes of Burnley and Leeds, especially at the Molineux this season, come out and really try and play. And that's not been a feature of Burnley's game whatsoever this season under Scott Parker. So I think that really sort of tells you what's going to be going on. And I actually think that's a massive benefit when it comes to Adam Armstrong, is because that he struggles against low blocks notoriously, and that's one thing that I'll probably criticise him most for, is that I do think one of his big weaknesses is against a low block, because he doesn't have that freedom to make the runs, to get in behind, to do all those little intricate things and make those little intricate runs, disguised runs, that perhaps he would against sides that are going to be coming onto them and trying to outplay Wolves. Unfortunately for Wolves, that will be the case. They will be able to play to Armstrong's strength for the rest of this season. I really do believe that. So it's going to be really exciting to see him in this side for 6 months, and then, of course, see what goes on for next season, really, because I think he'll be absolutely brilliant next season. I just feel like Rob Edwards football and Adam Armstrong is a match made in heaven, to be honest. Now, in possession, I think Wolves will look quite similar to this for the remainder of the season. Of course, it remains to be seen whether Emmanuel Agbadou actually does complete his move. So we'll just put him there as a placeholder for now. But I think this is how they'll look in possession a lot this season for the remainder of the Premier League anyway. Obviously, we know that Yerson Mosquera and Rodrigo Gomez both like to bomb on, of course. So naturally, they're going to be higher up. And I think Matheus Mane, again, is someone that is naturally just going to be further forward, and Wolves fans will want him to be. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Mane and Armstrong link up, to be honest, because these two, I think, are a match made in heaven for each other. I think Armstrong massively thrives off those creative players that have got an eye for a pass, a player that can try and find a run. And Matheus Mane often does find those players with those runs. It's just unfortunately Rokodar and Strand-Larsen just don't have the quality to run in behind, whereas Armstrong absolutely has that in abundance. So I think the link up between those two is going to be so exciting. It's going to be brilliant. Now, Armstrong, of course, when he was most prolific, you probably think back to that sort of Russell Martin era, I would say, probably, where he looks the most dangerous in terms of a high-tempo attacking team, a team that have a lot of the ball. And that's how I believe that Rob Edwards will try and play next season. I think Wolves will want to have a lot of the ball. They'll want to play expansive, exciting football, but also obviously be as effective as possible and pick up as many points as they can. Now, I do think Armstrong will thrive in that side, especially, I imagine, if they can keep Matheus Mane in the Championship, by the way. But, as I say, there's no point of Wolves signing Adam Armstrong if they're going to play a defensive brand of football, a boring brand of football. Rob Edwards isn't going to do that in the Championship. He just isn't going to do that. And he wouldn't have signed Armstrong if that was the case. I'm 99% sure of that. So I think when you're facing deep blocks next season, there will be games where Armstrong does fizzle out a bit, because he does ultimately struggle against teams that will sit deeper, and obviously newly promoted sides, stuff like that. I think he'll struggle a bit more because he'll have less freedom. But that's when you have the likes of Matheus Mane and players like that hopefully are still at the club making things happen from distance. Now, I think it's also a potential that we see, but hopefully, which is very unlikely, Fer Lopez stays next season in the Championship. And then ultimately, I think him and Armstrong have got what it takes to be a really strong, powerful duo, to be honest. And I think they work really well in tandem with each other. So overall, creative players, if Wolves can get as many of them through the door, ready for the Championship, that would be absolutely brilliant. I think Angel Gomez being a deal that they can absolutely exercise, even if they go down, is absolutely huge. Because if he can stay as well, I think Wolves have got a real massive chance of coming straight back up. And I'd say that with no sort of doubt, and that's given the fact that the Championship overall is a very unpredictable league, and the quality has gone up in recent years. But even then, for me, I think this side and some of the players that we've seen Wolves bring in, and some of the players that hopefully they'll try and keep next season, I think they've got a real chance. Now, as I say, he is limited in certain things. His hold-up play is pretty poor, but then you've got the likes of Rokodara for the remainder of this season to do that. I think when you look at him at making those little runs, he loves a little running behind here. He will, especially if the ball's out wide, say with Rodrigo Gomez, for example, there is 99% of the time he will be making that run into the penalty area. And if Rodrigo Gomez can put the ball into the corridor of uncertainty, or Hugo Bueno, who's also got a very good delivery from wide areas as well, I think they'll be absolutely flying. Obviously, Matheus Mane dropping in here potentially, playing those balls into Armstrong in there. Overall, I just think it's a really exciting signing, and people are not getting too buzzing about it. I'm seeing people on Twitter saying, yeah, we've gone from Raul Jimenez to Adam Armstrong, but ultimately you need a lot of positives. You need to look at the positives despite, what is a very negative season. And I think Adam Armstrong, you could not get many better players in the Championship to have up front than Adam Armstrong. And not to mention, I think it'll also be valuable in this season, because not many of us will hopefully have to watch Hwang this season. So absolutely huge plus for many of you at home as well. So overall, it's a very exciting deal in my opinion. I think especially when Wolves go down to the Championship, he will prove his level, especially in this side, and the players that Wolves will be able to attract being such a big club in the Championship next season. Now, if you did enjoy this video, I'd really appreciate it if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. As I've said, we're trying to reach 10,000 subscribers before the end of the year, so it's absolutely a unrealistic target, but I would absolutely appreciate it. Let me know what you think about Adam Armstrong, what you'd like to see from him as well for the remainder of this season going into next season, and I'll see you all in the next one.